Well, hello everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Bodacious Rant with Burning Rye. Hope everybody's doing good. Getting ready for Turkey Day this upcoming week,
Mhm.
Hope your stomachs are nice and empty and you're not bloated before the big meal as that day. For those who don't celebrate Thanksgiving, or if you're Native American, I apologize. Not trying to be disrespectful because it's just a weird holiday. It's a weird American holiday.
That's America in general.
Yeah, America's just weird like that. Let's not get into it right now, but it's actually kind of funny because we're going to be talking about two movies that are really messed up in America. So it's just like, what
So
the?
the thing we're talking about actually kind of applies in a weird way.
They really do, which is the best part. One of the first movie we're going to be talking about today, guys. One that's potentially it's definitely a bigger title, comes from a somewhat popular franchise. You guessed it, Hunger Games: The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, starring Tom Blythe, Rachel Zegler, Hunter Schafer from Euphoria. If you guys didn't know, we also have Viola Davis, Peter Dinklage, Tom Byrne, and also Jason Schwartzman. So everybody else is kind of just, I don't think I've ever seen before, or they're newer actors or something like that, or maybe from other
Mhm.
shows and stuff. But
Yeah,
that's not
probably a lot
important.
of like lesser known stuff.
Yeah, exactly. There's a good amount of unknowns or kind of up and comers that I've never seen before. So this movie that we're doing a non-spoiler review as always for a movie because it's only in theaters. So please do not forget to give us a like, ring the bell, and of course subscribe. We do appreciate you all, and like I said, we're very thankful for you guys. Don't ever forget that.
Hmm.
But yes, so this movie is basically a prequel that takes place 60 years. That sounds about 60-ish
Yeah,
years before,
roughly.
yeah, before the events of the Hunger Games series, in which Coriolanus Snow is not president yet. He's a very young student trying to make his way into the capital to eventually, essentially, he's a very ambitious character where he does want to become president one day. And this is going to be his first Hunger Games. He becomes a mentor to a character known as Lucy Greybird, played by Rachel Zegler. And in doing so, he's just kind of goes through a whole, very toxic and interesting web of just deceit and emotions. That's basically as much as I can put it without spoiling too much. Um, and so Tom Blythe, he plays Coriolanus Snow, which it's actually really funny. Like I really thought about that when going to the movie. Like Coriolanus, like, do you ever watch that movie with Ray Fiennes? Like came out like 10 plus years ago, like the Shakespearean adaptation
Of what?
of Coriolanus. You ever hear that play or
Oh,
you ever watch it?
no, never heard of that at all.
Well, it was kind of funny because it's essentially the rise and downfall of this like leader Coriolanus, who Ray Fiennes plays. It's basically like a Shakespearean thing, but they
Mm.
modernized it where he's like a military leader, and then he kind of just goes from like a soldier to like a terrorist essentially, and then dies. And that's kind of essentially like what happened with Coriolanus Snow in the movies. So
Oh, wow.
spoiler for those who've never seen the Hunger Games, but I just thought that was like, oh man, I never put Coriolanus and Coriolanus Snow to like, the name kind of spells out his fate. So
Yeah,
I never put those
definitely
two.
like a text that character was probably based off of.
Very much so, absolutely. And Tom Blythe, I've never seen anything. He wasn't bad. He definitely does kind of does look like a very young Donald Sutherland, sort of, not really, just because Donald Sutherland is very distinct, but close enough. And Peter Dinklage, he plays Dean Highbottom, which I just kept laughing to myself throughout the movie because it's like Highbottom, like what's the other family's name? No,
Longbottom?
I can't. No, not long bottom. I didn't want to think bottom. I'm thinking what's the opposite? Just high and low, and then just low face, low butt, low mouth. I don't know. That's why I'm being dumb. Anyways, and Viola Davis, she plays the game maker. I forget her name. Let me double check that real quick.
Dr. Volumnia.
Volumnia Gall, yeah,
Yeah,
which she had the gall to do all the things she did. You
horrible
see,
things.
yeah, you see they see what they did there with the names. You get it. Okay. Anyways,
They're very cheeky with the names, that's for sure.
yeah. So watching this movie kind of brought back like, you forget what the Hunger Games. Some of these names are like ridiculous, but they definitely play out the character. There's a little bit more flair with this because watching it 10 years ago, it's one of the, like, I never thought about, but it's like, yeah, it's a pretty young adult series, and this one
Hmm.
definitely plays along that. And overall, it was just okay. I knew I had a feeling that this movie wasn't going to be that good, just because it's like the Hunger Games is one of those franchises that ended on a very dull note, and I'm like, why do we need another one? Who asked for this? Like, what person wants to rewatch these series? I would rather just have a completely redone, like either movies or like a series on Netflix or some sort of streaming service. Just
Hmm.
that way we could really explore the Hunger Games, like the politics, the characters, all that good stuff. And to be honest, I feel like this was a movie that was unnecessary to just dive into how Coriolanus became President Snow of the Capitol and Pan Am. I will say, like, it was pretty interesting to see how much technology changed from that point in time to like where Katniss and her generation were at, where it went from, I mean, it was still pretty high tech in this movie, but it went from like 50s looking television stuff and all this technology to like the most futuristic stuff. I actually started rewatching the movies a little bit, specifically Catching Fire, because that's the best one. And it's like,
Yeah.
wow, they were not prepared compared to this movie. like the tributes, if you're gonna die by by killing each other, at least they had it way better with the technology and the training and the new generation compared to this one. So not a great thing either way, but I'm just saying. Bern, before I go on, what did you think of this movie? So I'm done hearing myself talk.
I mean, in concept, the movie's interesting. You know, like it's letting us have a peek at what not only life was like, years before the initial Hunger Games series started. You know, seeing how life, like how things were, sort of like how society it was in like the earlier times, and also getting to see how Snow became the person that it was. So in concept, the ideas are interesting here. It's in the execution, I think, where a lot of it is fairly lacking. And I think it was probably a mistake to bring in Francis Lawrence back as the director, just because I kind of get a similar feeling when I think of David Yates and his later Harry Potter movies, where he defined the look of those like last few of them, and then later on came back to do the Fantastic Beast movies, and those movies felt kind of stale. I felt like we've already seen everything we like he's shown us everything that he wanted to show. So it doesn't feel like there's a lot of creative there's like creative vigor for the series, and it feels the same way here with Francis Lawrence, where a lot of it is very kind of dull. It's not presented in the most interesting way, and not through the fault of the actors. I think all the actors do a fairly decent job with what's going on here, but just visually it's a very undynamic and a little bit uninteresting, and presented in a way where I felt like, in similar ways to you, where it's like this doesn't feel like it's justifying its own existence. Like, I know it's based on a book. I didn't read this particular book. I did read the initial Hunger Games trilogy, so this one I'm coming in completely fresh. And while I do like the concepts, like on the high points of it, like just on the overall aspect of it, it's when we get into the nitty gritties where it's like, man, I feel like there was lacking in sort of the characterization of these people, and really digging into the politics of the world, where this movie felt like it was such in a rush from getting to one point to the next one, where we couldn't really like dig into the things that were going on here. And that was a little bit disappointing, where I feel like, yeah, this probably would have been better served as you mentioned, as a streaming series or something, where we could take some time and live in this world for a little while longer and get to know these characters before all these crazy events start happening, and done so with someone else's creative eye. I think would have been a little bit better than what we got here.
Yeah, and I think the other one of the other things before I give my ranting rating, and I just want to talk about the actors a little bit. I think we've also just gotten a lot more movies and content regarding that kind of topic, like fighting for survival on in a post-apocalyptic landscape. One of them that comes to mind, like in the fight for survival aspect, was Squid Games, and that's an example of like how you dive deep into the characters and really shell it out, because that's definitely a movie that couldn't, or a show that could not have been done as a movie format, whether you do it in like one, two, and three. It's just one of those things like, nah, it should have been the series. Um, and then with that, like it's one of those genres. I'm like, it's very particular. It definitely works better as a series format. But with the actors being said, Hunter Schafer didn't feel like she needed to be in it. Her character was kind of not well written, unfortunately, where they just wasn't enough to justify her being there. Tom Blythe wasn't bad for Coriolanus Snow. I just feel like his character was also written very topsy turvy. It was very unbalanced. Where it's like, are we it just wasn't a clear direction on what he's trying to be. But again, I don't know. It is a young adult kind of franchise, and he's a young adult. He's kind of like a teenager, like very young 20s guy. So it kind of works out that way, I suppose. My standouts actually were Rachel Zegler because I know she's getting a lot of flack right now for being cast as Snow White and stuff like that. But I did enjoy her character in it for the most part. A little weird, but man, she has an incredible singing voice. That's the only spoiler I can really give. And I mean, I never saw the retelling of the remake of West Side Story a couple years ago, so I'm sure she sang in that one, but I just never heard that one.
Yeah, she was great in that one for sure.
Yeah, so finally seeing her in this one, I was like, dang, she killed it, and she really was like a songbird in this story. But that, and then I actually really liked Peter Dinklage's character. He was he came off very brash in the first, like, the parts he was in the beginning, but the end it really cleared up his character, and I was like, oh, no wonder you are the way you are. It was that I was like, I really like him in that. Viola Davis, I love her as an actor, but this is just one of those roles I was like, man, you just went way too much. You went Johnny Depp with it too, really, where it's like I couldn't buy it, I couldn't get into it, a little too loopy for my taste. Jason Schwartzman, oh my god, I can't talk right now. Jason Schwartzman, uh, he's supposed to be like Stanley Tucci's character. He's the host of the Hunger Games, Lucretius Lucky Flickerman, which again, just ridiculous name, but kind of fun to say the more you say it. But he was just okay. So overall, was just the unbalanced storytelling, and yeah, like you put it the best way, that the director came back, and or whoever was involved from the previous movies came back, and it just felt stale. There was nothing really new to this to really be like, oh my god, this is amazing. And having said all that, I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 5, just because I wasn't feeling the movie. I didn't think it needed to get made. But if you are a fan of the Hunger Games, like, you really liked all the movies, then maybe you'll like this. It's definitely I would definitely recommend it for like a $5 Tuesday though. I did see it in IMAX. Don't recommend that too much because there was a lot of jumping from ratio to ratio, from like scene to scene. It wasn't like a whole sequence or whole set of scenes together in IMAX. So I didn't care for that. That stuff kind of bothers me when it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and that's one of those things that are indicative or of the filmmakers knowing the format that they're using. It's good when it's working. When they know when to use the IMAX ratio and the sequences, and like letting that play out instead of just jumping back and forth. And when it does that, that can be very annoying. So I only saw it regular, so I didn't get to experience that. But I can imagine for a lot of people that pay attention to that stuff, like us, would find that frustrating. So definitely, I can understand that for sure. But yeah, like Tom Blythe and Rachel Zegler, I thought they were both fine. Their chemistry was a little bit lacking for me. Individually, they were both pretty good, but when they're trying to sell the love story dynamic, didn't always work for me. For me in particular, I did like Viola Davis, Jason Schwartzman, and Peter Dinklage, just because it felt like they kind of knew like the assignment here, where it was like everything else was kind of dull, so they were at least going to have fun with it. So I did appreciate that because they were the only uh, breaths of life in this overall very just dark and dull movie at times. Some of the action sequences are pretty fun and dynamic, but yeah, like, again, it's not nowhere near as creative as we saw in things like Catching Fire, where that movie was really great with the action sequences. So yeah, overall, it's not the worst movie. I wouldn't even say it's the worst one in the franchise. I did like this more than the Mockingjay movies, but I mean that one was because the material itself I think wasn't the strongest in Mockingjay. But yeah, overall this is one, yeah, I would also recommend maybe catching a matinee or a $5 Tuesday, because there's nothing here that I would say, unless you're a diehard fan of this, that you're gonna want to go to the movies for. So, and that's kind of unfortunate. So for me, this one is also going to be a 2 out of 5. Decent time at the movies, but yeah, it's not one you're going to walk away from thinking, "Oh man, that was incredible." But you would probably walk out and think, "Yeah, that was fine. That was okay."
Bernie, this is one of the proud moments where I'm like, you agree with me on the ratings, and I'm like, I love it. sink into the darkness. I'm just kidding. It's not that I want to hate the movie. It's just like one of those things. I'm like, I just, yeah, like you said it best. There were some cool moments in it, and there were some good character moments. And Viola Davis and them, at least they were as weird as they were. They were kind of entertaining. They definitely tried to revive. They give you the Hunger Games feel, but again, it felt unnecessary. But for those of you who were able to catch it this last weekend, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Was it did you make me want to watch the Hunger Games movies again? We'd love to know to keep that conversation going. But until then, stay tuned. We are going to have a review on the newest Eli Roth movie, Thanksgiving, and as Taika Waititi's Next Gold Wins. So keep an eye out for those. We'll be dropping those soon. And again, we got the Thanksgiving's coming up this week. Invincible Part 1 of season 2 is almost done, so keep an eye out for that. And Scott Pilgrim on Netflix dropped. A lot of great content right now, so we're gonna watch it all for you. You don't forget that, guys. You're all special to us, all our ranters. So until next time, everyone, stay bodacious and keep on ranting for us.
Absolutely, everybody. Be good, be safe, and as always, we'll catch you on the next one.